Tonight we're going to have a quick look at a couple of late 1960s multi-band shortwave receivers. The first one here on the left is the Sony Transworld, and you can see it's an 18 transistor, super sensitivity. It has a long wave band, medium wave, shortwave 1 which goes from 2.3 megahertz to 7.3, shortwave 2 from 8 megahertz to 22 megahertz, and you'll also notice there's a band spread of the 49 meter band from 5.95 megahertz to 6.2. Then of course there's the standard FM broadcast band from 87 megahertz to 108 megahertz. You can see that there's tuning for the long wave, medium wave, shortwave 1 and shortwave 2 in the 49 meter band, plus a tuning dial for the FM. Up here we have an automatic frequency control switch on off. You have fine tuning, you have a squelch control which is operational on the FM band, and then you have separate bass and treble controls with of course the volume, and then there's a tuning indicator and battery indicator on the upper right hand side. On top of the receiver, you've got your switching, and you've also got a light button there. Haven't worked out quite what the auto does. I think it's possibly got something to do with selecting the antennas. There's a couple of antennas there which you can see, and quite a large radio, quite a heavy radio, and very good audio. Now I'll just turn it up for a second. We're actually listening to 4835 megahertz, ABC Northern Territory, and there's a little bit of cricket.
It doesn't get any better than that. I mean,
and we've got a fine tuning control here.
I suppose this folks won't ever want to see that replay again. Neither would any of the England boys, because they took
quite a good audio response on this radio. Okay, now to the right, a radio which was brought out roughly the same time in direct competition was the Sharp, and this is the Sharp FV1800. Again, you can see it's long wave, medium wave, shortwave 1, shortwave 2, shortwave 3 and FM. In this case, a bit better band spread. We go from 1.6 megahertz in shortwave 1 to 4.3, 3.5 on shortwave 2 to 12.25 megahertz. Then shortwave 3, 12 megahertz to 26.11. And then of course the standard broadcast FM band of 88 megahertz to 108. Here you've got concentric tuning, your main tuning control on the larger outer wheel, and the inner wheel you've got fine tuning. Below that you have your wave change switch, and then below that again you have slider controls for bass, treble and volume, and then a switch which is very interesting for this era, domestic shortwave receivers. We have a switch for a BFO. Now for our viewers, you'll notice the other side is nav. Now perhaps somebody can make comment on this video as to what nav is. I haven't been able to get any manuals on either of these two radios, unfortunately. There's nothing much on the net at all about them. And you can see on the controls on the right hand side there, you've got a nav control off, and it's a rotary control. I've got no idea what it does. However, when you switch into BFO, you can control the BFO pitch with it. Above that you've got a light, and we can switch the light on if you like. You can get a bit of an idea. You probably can't see that all that well with this in the light in the room here. You have a phono switch where you can switch for an input, phono input, just to use the amplifier. Again, you've got an automatic frequency control switch. You've got a switch there between AC and internal DC, and your main power switch, and a battery switch, push button switch on the top of that. Again, there's a couple of antennas, one FM, one shortwave. And this section up the top here, which is a lift up section, you can see it has a world map, and unfortunately that's where the instructions and a couple of other booklets were housed. Unfortunately, I don't have those, but I'll look around for those at some stage. But it's in very, very nice order. I'll turn the Sanyo down for a second. We can turn the Sharp up. Very powerful audio on the Sharp.
It was an improbable chase all the way, and that was how it proved.
Again, we're listening to ABC Northern Territory with some cricket there. Okay, very, very nice radios. As I said, around about 1968 to around about 1970. They would have represented a fair bit of money in their day, both these radios. And they were obviously bought out to be in direct competition with the German Grundig and so the United States, the Zenith. These were the Japanese sort of offerings of the time, and of course there were other receivers of their day as well. But I was very pleased to get hold of these radios, and they seem to work fairly well. And obviously, you know, with the limitations of the technology, and again, as I've mentioned before, you cannot compare these sort of radios to more serious desktop communications receivers, or indeed a lot of these current portables that for the companies like of Texan and things like that. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed tonight's a brief sort of look at these two radios. And you know, there's certainly radios worthwhile getting hold of for collectors if you ever come across them. Cheers, catch you again.